right, we're back to the regular work session, and I know that Megan and from Carlisle Wortman is in the building.
It's the Megan show.
Yeah.
We're ready. This is a time crunch.
Is Megan here?
Yep, I saw her right back
I
there.
saw her earlier.
Yeah, she's right behind all those people.
They're delivered to the post office tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
So you'll have them by the end of, however long it takes the post office to deliver them. They're delivering to the post office tomorrow.
Okay, because Alina worked with Ypsilanti Township, and I just said that they usually come out in January, and I wasn't sure.
She should get it, because it goes to every address.
Right.
Not by resident.
Right.
If she doesn't have extras. If I had them now, I could give it to her. All right, Megan.
Hi, Megan Masson-Minnock with Carlisle Wortman Associates. Thanks so much for giving us some time tonight on the work session. I am going to turn the majority of the program over to William St. Amour of Cobalt. But first, just wanted to kind of put the survey into context. It's part of the Ypsilanti Township 2040 process. You can see the process that's up on the larger slide. And right now we're ending 2018. And then the survey was part of the data collection and analysis as part of the plan. We're in 2019. We are going into the developing the master plan, which is really a policy roadmap, and wanted to let you all know of the Master Plan Workshop dates, which will be February 14th through the 16th, and will be hosted primarily at the UAW Hall. Thank you very much, Trustee Wilson, for helping that to happen. This is part of that 2-year process to have a community-based vision and update plans and policies. And as part of that, we really, at your behest, brought in Cobalt to do a statistically valid survey, and I'm going to turn over to Will to walk you through the results that were in your packet. Yeah.
Can you give us that time and date of that February?
Sure. February 14th, Valentine's Day, Thursday. I believe we'll start at noon, and then we'll go through Saturday, February 16th, probably ending around 2 o'clock. Not all the details are carved out. The steering committee would like us to have a community pancake breakfast on Saturday, so we're working to make that happen. Figure we'll get more people out that way if we feed them and have lots of fun. All right. Will?
Thank you. Good evening. So I understand you received a number of things in your packet. I'll be going over the shorter version of the survey. You also have a 3-page summary document. I believe that sums up some of the major points. There's a longer version of the summary. And then there's also what I like to call a crosstab, which is an Excel document with a number of rows and columns and lots of numbers. It's very much an eye chart. I'll go over this a little bit more in terms of how to use this tool, because this is probably the most useful part in terms of what the results are and getting the most insights from the survey itself. But today I'll just be going over the highlights to kind of orient you to the results. And then if you have questions, I can answer them here or I can answer them later as well. So here to be a resource for you.
We don't have that real detailed one, do we? We do? In a okay, I apologize. I didn't see it. But it's okay.
And if you don't, I can always email it
When
to
you
you
get
again.
to it, I'll
Yeah.
see it. Sorry.
Okay, so a little bit of background on Cobalt and who we are and what we do. So we are a 501c3 nonprofit research coalition. We work with communities across the U.S. On these types of projects. And we've been collaborating with Carlisle to gather the data to help feed the planning process. Study goals, certainly to inform the planning decision. That's part of what we wanted to do. We also wanted to compare the resident perceptions with a survey that we did for the township back in 2009 and see how those have changed over time. We also do a number of benchmarks every year. So we wanted to compare how well the performance of the township looks compared to those benchmarks to give you some context of your scores, and then really to help document that baseline as you guys continue to make improvements so you can measure that and manage that more effectively. So a little bit on the methodology. We distributed surveys to 1,500 residents, randomly sampled. We collected the results back via mail and via online. We also sent out a supplemental e-blast out to folks to build up the response. And then also there were a number of folks who responded who were either businesses or residents who were just interested in participating in the survey processes and sharing their thoughts. So in the data, generally I'll be talking about the combined results because when we looked at the data itself, there were not a lot of strong differences. There are some questions that did have differences though based on which particular group responded, and we flagged those throughout the presentation so that you can see where those differences are. We received response from 520 residents, which is very, very solid. One of the questions that often come up is that a good response or not for a community our size? And for a national survey, to get plus or minus 5% for the entire population of the U.S., you only need about 384 responses to get that plus or minus 5%. So really, this is a very solid showing. The results themselves are divided up by demographic groups so that any individual voice in the community wouldn't be drowned out just because that might be a smaller cohort. So the results are available by residency, whether people own or rent, the type of home that they live in, their employment location, so that do they work inside the community, outside the community, are they retired or are they unemployed, age, education, income, home composition, so do they have young children or seniors, dependent parents living with them, whether or not they own a business, which school district they're in, and then we had some census tract clusters that we looked at as well, so we could get a good sense of geographical differences. This next chart is a tiny little snippet of the crosstabs that I mentioned earlier, and this is very much scientifically designed to be unreadable, and I think we've succeeded in doing that. The main purpose of this slide is just to explain how to use these particular documents. So we take every demographic group in the township and we break them apart by row. Then we have every question in the survey and those go across by the column. So if you were to draw down by the column and by a particular demographic group, you would get a good sense for that particular demographic group, how they responded compared to other demographic groups. We add color coding to make that easier. So if you see a column that's all blue, that means that really, regardless of demographic group, the responses are pretty consistent. If you see all red, same sort of thing. Those are lower scores, and again, regardless of demographic group, they're pretty consistent. When you see more checkering in terms of a mix of red and blue, that's where you've got more differences by neighborhood or by demographic group. So that's where you want to look a little bit more closely. We've also taken these and we've broken them apart by the type of sample. So those folks who decided to participate and they weren't part of the random samples, we have them broken apart separately so that you can see those differences in the scores and how they responded.
Can I just ask a question?
Sure.
Where it says age, where it says under 18, and then under that neighborhood one, it says 100%. I don't know, what does that mean?
So in that
100%
particular
of what, did what?
question, let's see, It's a little hard to read from this distance.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's the very first one under age. It says age, 100%. Up above it is neighborhood, cafe.
Yeah, so this particular question, just as an example, was asking what kind of development they would like to see, and that means 100% of the folks in that age category selected that as one of the things that they could choose.
That's all I needed.
So, and with that particular cohort, since it's a small cohort, you tend to get more high scores or very low scores. There's a lot more volatility to it. So,
Quick question.
Yes.
So there were under 18 people included in the survey?
there were a few who responded.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
So, but it was a very, very small. That's why you get some of the variation like that. And the packet itself, I mean, this is an example of it, so there's lots of data. It can be used really well as you're having conversations in the community. So if you're chatting with someone, they corner you in the grocery store or when you're out and about. If there's a particular question, you can see that a particular group marked it particularly low. So if you're looking at parks or something and people marked maybe maintenance of parks particularly low, you're out in the community and you see someone that's from that demographic group, they have young children, for example, it can really help you have a much more specific kind of conversation with them as, hey, we had some feedback from the survey. We understand that people with younger children tended to mark this lower. Can you give us some insights of things that we can do from your perspective that would move that score up? And that can generally give you a much more specific kind of insight than just generally, how are things going? What can we do better? So there's a lot of opportunities to do that in this particular tool. Okay. Get to the bottom line on the results. You did really well. Residents are pleased with the community based on satisfaction results, and their results are generally higher than they were back in 2009 when we did this before. That's a good thing, so you're making progress. State benchmarks for similarly sized communities, there were some areas that you were above and some areas that you were below. As far as areas that you were above, you exceeded for local government, so there's a number of questions in local government in terms of trust and those types of things. Road maintenance, public transportation, interest in volunteering, brush leaf disposal, and intention to support local government. Things that were below the benchmarks were satisfaction with the schools, community image, bicycle and foot traffic, shopping and dining options, cultural options, local economy, and park maintenance. In the area of development, we asked folks what they would like to see, and there's a lot of interest in non-fast food restaurants. More cultural facilities, so things to do like museums and gardens and that kind of thing. Small neighborhood businesses, and grocery, so particularly something that's other than Kroger, like an Aldi's or a Trader Joe's or a Fresh Time, was that it? We were talking about it in the hallway. Didn't come up in the comments, but those types of stores. From a housing standpoint, there's a lot of interest in single-family housing and independent senior housing. We asked residents what they like best, and location was really the thing that came up most often. And they also liked the lower cost of housing and the general lower cost of living in the township compared to Ann Arbor was the one that came up most often. We asked residents what they would like to see strengthened, school quality, quality of appearance in the township, public safety, particularly walking and biking and walking at night, and park maintenance were all areas that came up with that. And then areas that could improve their overall satisfaction with the township. Effective communication with the community is one area that was a bit lower that they would said in the comments they would like to have improved communication. Encouragement of citizen ideas and involvement, which this whole process has been one way of doing that. Strengthen the local economy, and the availability and quality of jobs. And again, this is perceptual data, so it could be that people just aren't aware of some of the resources that are available. So you'll want to take that into consideration as you're thinking about how you can move the needle on some of these perceptions. Looking at outcome intentions. So these are things like people recommending the community as a place to live, encouraging people to start a business in the community and so on. Your scores are all above the 2009 levels. So the current score is in blue, the 2009 score is in green. So you've seen that you have improved across the board in those areas. When we look at community image, we've also seen a lot of improvement. So you can see what those different areas are as far as a safe place to live, an enjoyable place for children and so on. It was a bit lower. It fell a little bit in the area of physically attractive curb appeal. So that's something that you'd want to pay attention to as you go deeper into the planning process. When we look at the benchmarks on image, even though your scores came up, you're still falling a bit behind the benchmarks. So the way that this chart is organized is over on the far right-hand side, you can see the Ypsilanti Charter Township columns overall. And then the difference is comparing your score to the Michigan benchmark for similarly sized communities. Page 12. So you can see that there's a number of areas where you are below the benchmark. So again, these are things that you want to pay attention to from a planning standpoint as you go deeper into the process.
So where on this, just want to understand that on that.
So for example,
Overall is us?
the overall is you,
Okay.
all the way over on the right, so that's your overall score. And then you can see the difference. So for example, that first question, safe place to live, your score is a 64. For the state overall, it's an 80, so that would be the difference in the scores.
Question.
Yes?
Just generally, the 80 for the state, do you know how that is comprised? Because the reason why I say that question is did it skew heavily outside of urban areas? Because I just wanted, because
Sure.
that would be the first question I had when I saw that.
Yeah, it tends to mirror the state population. So as far as the overall concentration in the state does tend to be more urban. So the benchmark itself leans toward more urban. But this particular size, the 2,500 to 100,000, tends to be more suburb, more outlying areas as opposed to city core kind of places. So it would also include places in the state like Midland. They would be part of that mix as well. So, which is a very different kind of,
What is that number like? For under a Charter Township one, it says 64, 64, 60. Is that a percentage or?
that is
That,
the,
how do you rank that?
yeah, it's actually a scale. So it's on a
Wait.
scale of 0 to 100. And this is part of the American Customer Satisfaction Index methodology out of the U of M Business School. And so it's very unusual for anyone to get over 90. That's really unusual. So most communities that I work with actually tend to be, in that 60 to low 70 range. So your scores actually aren't far off from the communities that we work with.
So I'm clear and people can't read what's behind us. The satisfaction for your local community, the benchmark is 74, is that correct? And then we received 72? Am I reading that
Go
correctly?
ahead. What page you on, Bren?
Comparison to benchmark?
See what page? Number. No, go down. No,
Oh, there it is.
no, your chart was at the top.
What's that?
Yeah, at the bottom it has a page number. 7. Oh, you weren't on 17, you were on a different one. I think you were higher up, like 12 or something.
So, I don't
Why
know.
not?
Yeah, it says,
Okay, I'm sorry.
I think
you're in safe
I
place,
don't
I'm
know.
sorry.
But it says safe place to live, overall 77 is the benchmark for Michigan, is that correct?
77 is Michigan overall, and 80 is for similarly sized communities. So
Ours is 64,
correct.
okay.
Yep. So you're 16 points below the Michigan benchmark for similarly sized communities.
And this was 400 and, how many participants?
590 or 520? 520.
And you sent it to 1,000, 1,500?
1,500. Yep.
Statistically, that,
Yes.
Pretty good.
Within plus or
that
minus
sounds
5%.
crazy, but my understanding is that's a high return if you send it out to so many.
It was a very solid return. So if
Can
people
you
took
check
time
it
to-
against all those, like, does it match our demographic?
There's always a skewing on surveys, so they tend to skew older and usually more affluent. So that's one reason that we really push the crosstabs, because it allows you to see, group by group,
Like demographic
how did they
group.
respond? Otherwise, even if it did perfectly match your demographics, you'd still drown out the voices of the smaller groups.
So we don't have that in this presentation, do we, those tabs?
They should be in your packet. Local government ratings. So these are questions as far as their perceptions of local government management and how that goes. And you can see that the scores are above where you were in 2009. So the scores have gone up. And when we look at, and for the three that are over on the far right-hand side, we didn't ask those questions back in 2009. So there's no comparison with those.
What page is that? Okay. Sorry.
Excuse me, in your packet, it's page 161. So if you're looking.
Oh, no, I was just looking at his packet, yeah, his numbers, but thank you.
Sure.
Oh, that helps.
So we didn't ask those three questions back in 2009. When we look at the benchmarks for the township in terms of local government management, we see that you're well above the benchmarks in most of these areas. So I think the township residents do have a lot of trust in the kind of work that you're doing, but there's larger, social and economic things that you'll need to work on. Yes.
Yes, it brings up another question. So I'm looking at effective communication,
Yep.
encouraging citizens' involvement, which is good because it's 20% up, and professionalism and things of that nature. So how would that, I guess you could say, correlate with the other perception of the community basically not meeting the benchmarks per what the average in the state of Michigan is? It's almost like it's a little bit of a disconnect there.
So with this is looking from a statistical standpoint, where do they score you and how does that score compare? In the prior question, it was more of an open-ended thing in terms of what would you like to see improve, so it was more of a top-of-mind kind of thing that they wrote in. So that would be the difference. So we asked them a question of, from a development standpoint, what are some of the things that you would like to see moving forward? And some of the comments from the themes, it set up so that the words that were included most often in these verbatim comments are the words that are the largest. And so we then take that to see what the themes are around those words. So you can see the word grocery cutting across the middle was very large. And this is where folks really wanted to have another option. That Kroger they felt was too crowded. It was hard to get around in there. And they would like an Aldi's or a Trader's Joe or some kind of grocery store. That's more of a higher end kind of grocery store. Food, large word right there in the bottom right corner. Anything but fast food, more healthy food kind of options. And then shops came up quite often as well. So more coffee shops, especially independent coffee shops. That's something that came up. More smaller shops instead of the big box store. Walkable areas where the shops are so people can kind of go from shop to shop and have more of that downtown kind of experience. We asked them about the types of housing needed, and you can see the percentage of folks that selected these various options. You can see that overall the two areas selected most often were the smaller single family, and then also in the center, the independent and senior housing. Those are the two areas that people would like to see more available in the township going forward. We asked them what they like best about living in the township, and we gave them a number of closed options that they could select from, and overwhelmingly, location is the thing that came up. So if you're looking at the differentiator, that's why people come here. This is why people stay here overwhelmingly. But there's other reasons as well. Diversity, people really appreciate that, and access to basic things, food, health services, all of those kind of things that they would like in the community are available close by. We also asked them, why did they move to Ypsilanti Township in the first place? And again, you see the same sort of cloud with the words that came up most often being the largest there. Housing is the big one marching right across the bottom corner there. People said generally affordable housing, nice housing, lower property taxes. Those are the real things that drew them into the township. You can also see Ann and Arbor in there, close to Ann Arbor, less expensive than Ann Arbor. They work in Ann Arbor, and this is a good place for them to have their home as they commute into the city. And then the word live came up also. You can see that in the upper right-hand side. And these are people who've lived here all their life, or they lived here as a child and then came back later because they really felt a tie to the community. We asked them what would they like to see change. And quality of schools was far and away the thing that came up most often in this area. And even though that's not something that you have direct control over, it's certainly having an influence on the community and what the perceptions are. And there may be opportunities for you to develop ways of influencing the schools and maybe doing more joint kind of things, since it's definitely a win-win opportunity for both. And then access to employment opportunities was the second area that came up. We gave them the option of choosing other, and again, there's a word cloud, and they would like to see under the word better, better parks and facilities, better roads and traffic flow, and better safety. The word areas, you can see that came up on the right-hand side. And this is really looking at the quality of appearance and to clean some of the areas up that are looking a little bit more blighted, a little bit more rundown. And then bike came up also, so more bike trails. Bike paths should all connect so that people can get around more easily with the non-motorized transportation.
Were you able to compare that to the last? Because I know that was a number one thing in the 2009 sidewalks, bike paths.
In the open ed, I can pull that out. So I've still got the record. I didn't do that from a qualitative, yeah.
Because I know that was number one, and I didn't know where it came up.
So I had a quick
Yes.
question again. And I'm going back to the, what would you like to see to change? And I see that you give it, take schools like 63% almost. And I guess to connect that back to against the benchmark for Michigan is, would you say that the quality of the schools, at least the perception of the individuals that took the survey, may be bringing down what they perceive in regards to what's the overall quality of the community, even though directly township government, don't have a direct effect on schools?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yeah. There's a huge halo effect in terms of kind of overall livability and placemaking. So, yes. Comparison to benchmarks. So this is looking at some of these specific areas in terms of shopping for everyday items, shopping for major items, availability of jobs, some of these economic elements. And you can see this is the area where, again, there's a number of things below the benchmarks for you to look at from a planning perspective. We asked them if there were some specific areas that they would like the township to address as part of the planning process. And the things that came up most often were, again, housing, in terms of more housing that's affordable. There were a number of comments as far as limiting development. They didn't want to have a huge oversupply where it kind of brought down the property values too much. More senior housing and better maintenance. Again, coming back to that code enforcement and dealing with some of those areas that are a little bit more run down. Schools came up often to go along with your comment on the schools, improve the schools, work on getting more support for the schools. The schools help improve home value, and higher home value provides more taxes to help fund the schools. And then businesses, attracting and retaining diverse businesses and restaurants. So fewer industrial kind of big box things, more upscale, looking at regulations and tax approaches that might attract those types of enterprises more easily. So that concludes the quick overview. As you go through the packet, if you do have more detailed questions, certainly talk to Karen, and Karen's probably a good one to feed them to me, and then I can respond back and get any sort of additional detail that you'd like to see. Thank you very much. Any other questions?
Any other comments or questions? Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just wanted to say that we were looking also as part of the general process to share the memo that was in your packet with the community via the website and other methods that we've been using in Ypsilanti Township 2040. But also we're going to really use the data as part to shape the plans and to help help to serve as a basis for explaining why actions are being taken or where the starting point is. And most of what we heard in the survey has really resonated with what we've heard when we've gone to neighborhood watch meetings, when we've had different events in the community. But one of the things also we want to plant the seed for is that in 5 years from when the master plan is adopted, you'll have another update. And that this type of survey is a great way to do it on a regular basis is a great way to see where you're going and see what you want to achieve and where you're and what's happened in terms of, that constant evaluation loop that's part of planning. We found it just a delightful collaboration with Cobalt, and we're so happy you suggested them to be part of the process. And we think that the crosstab sheet, which is there, it's huge. You can spend hours with it. We won't bust our budget spending hours with it, but we want to be able to share it with the community and also through the master plan so that this is put down and people can use it for years to come.
All right, thank you very much. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Merry Christmas to you.
So now it's time to go over the agenda. 6:10. We have the proclamation honoring Belleville High School football team.
Thanks, Monica, for bringing this forward. It's my understanding that the coach, maybe the AD director, and I think some of the football players are going to come, so we'll do that first in the beginning. I think we do it before public comments, and then maybe get a picture so we put it on the web. Yeah, did I put after public comments? I couldn't remember. Yeah, so after public comments. But yeah, I think it'd be great to get it on the web because it was a historic event. So we're excited. So anyways, hopefully some folks will show up from the football team. And we have a proclamation, a packet that we can give to them so that every staff, we did 45. So that includes the whole team and every staff member and coach can get a copy. So thanks, Monica, for bringing that up.
Okay, consent agenda, are there any questions on that? I do have some changes for the minutes. I'll give them to you. Minor changes, nothing big. Statements and checks, or any questions on that? The treasurer's report will be at the next board meeting. We have the legal update from the attorney, but the request for authorization for the easement acquisition from Camelot Apartments. That is an actual action item. Other question? Mr. Winters, do you want to get, this is for the Washtenaw Avenue sidewalk that, I don't know, 10 years, maybe? We've been working on this.
4.
I told Clerk Rowe this week that I had a conversation with Nathan Vogt. He's the Washtenaw County Economic Development Specialist that's been working with the township for X number of months, years, to try and get these sidewalk easements acquired. I think we have most of the easements. We're down to one. We don't have 3 of them in hand beyond the fact they've been promised. So Nathan and I decided that what we should do is just kind of at least spend the next few weeks, if we can, and try and get in our possession the 3 that reportedly have been signed. The 7th one is the one that we're saving for last because there's some legal issues involving Camelot that they want their corporate counsel to be involved in, and before they will respond back, they want a certain amount of dollars, specifically $7,500, be put up in some kind of a I don't want to say escrow. It's more of like an upfront cost to us. I don't think we'll get any of it back, knowing the fact that it's going to be going for legal review and other corporate matters. But in order to make this project meet the new deadlines and timelines of the county, I think it has to be done. And so I did tell Nathan that I would come to the board this evening and make that request, because I don't think I had the authority to spend those dollars without the township board weighing in and either authorizing, and again, thumbs up, thumbs down. But again, as Brenda said, you've been dealing with this issue for a number of months, and we're
Years.
close. We're just not there just yet.
Years.
So Nathan and I decided we're going to try and make it work. And so I know Charlotte's been putting a lot of time into it as well. But at this point in time, I think we just need to see what we can do about dealing with Camelot and work with their council to try and make this happen. That's the basis behind the equity request for the $7,000.
Is there an agreement, Doug, or anything, or would there be a,
Well, the goal is to obtain the easement from them, but those were their conditions.
I know, there's not a lot in the packet at all, so I'm trying to, just for the record, and
The request would be for authorization for us as a township to expend up to $7,500 to acquire this easement.
Negotiations, right?
It's going to be negotiated.
And the easement will come back, right?
Well, yes, absolutely.
so this authorizes you to offer up to $7,500 for an easement acquisition for Camelot
Release.
Apartment for the purpose of the sidewalk.
Yes, and it's not something that we're going to write a check for, just tonight, just I want to have the authority
Authorization to do.
to let them know that if we can make this work, then we will make
Okay.
that up to that dollar amount for attorney fees and their other corporate.
I know
It's
with them
more
too.
difficult to explain because they have such a corporate, they have layers of corporate organization, reorganization, and even though it's a small piece of sidewalk, because of the banks that have mortgages on the property, it's more complicated than what it might appear to be at first glance. But this is where we've taken it to at this point. So either we need to push across the finish line or stop. And I think we've come too far to stop.
Have we received any other easements?
I think Karen has 3 in hand.
Three that's actually been filed and recorded. So those are together, but there's still this one, Camelot, and 3 others out there, right?
We've been told that there's 3 out there that have been signed or are going to be signed. We don't, that's why Nathan and I decided we're just going to try
Enough
and,
talk, all right.
take charge and get those remaining 4. Of the remaining 4, the one is this Camelot that requires.
So we need the at home, I think, is that the name of it?
It's not called at home. It's the one having to do with Farmer Jack, and it's that location, Asia Market.
Yeah,
I think you have Big Boy was the one that gave an easement.
right.
This is the only one that we don't have a full commitment to, right?
No, they asked for compensation to be
Right.
reimbursed for their attorney fees in exchange for the easement.
That's part of it.
Okay. Okay.
That's what you call.
All right. Do you have a general legal update, or can we go into new business?
I'll wait.
Okay. Under new business, we do have to approve the recommendation of the Liquor Commission to grant a Class C liquor license to Herodotl and Nathali Savitas. How bad did I do? I hope I did okay. For the Big Boy Restaurant located at 2800 Washtenaw.
Go ahead, Stan.
The Liquor Commission met on December 14th, Larry Doe, Jimmy Wilson, myself, with Royce, I would say Royce, was it? Yeah. And his son-in-law, Rick. Royce is currently the owner, has been for several years, of the Tower Inn on Cross Street in the city of Ypsilanti. He's an Ypsilanti resident along with his wife, and they made application on May 31st for a Class C liquor license for a new location that they've purchased at 2800 Washtenaw, which is the Big Boy Restaurant. They brought in their plans, went over what they're hoping to do. they still have a franchise agreement for at least another year or two with Big Boy, and then at that time, they'll reevaluate whether they're going to stay with that franchise or move off on their own, as some of the other former Big Boy restaurants have done. The two they mentioned most notably were in Milan and Tecumseh. So they shared their business plan. I've got it here tonight if anybody cares to look at it.
Stan, actually, we made copies for
Okay.
those that weren't on the commission, so
Okay.
everybody has it. It
So-
looks like this with Big Boy in the front.
We went through it quite a bit. Their plans are currently to expand their employment force from 30, 35 up to in the neighborhood of 60, provided they get this license that will allow them to do that. The plan they presented was well thought out, at least in our opinion. It was reasonable. Obviously, their hours will expand. They have already begun the renovation interior of the building. They're going to work on the exterior as well. They have plans, at least a desire to have some kind of an outdoor dining at some point in the future. So the short answer is, after the presentation that the three of us sat through, I believe it was and still is our recommendation unanimously to recommend to the board to approve the Class C liquor license for this applicant.
Would the petitioner like to, someone just to go review, should talk about your plans for it?
It's much easier to understand.
Okay.
All right. Well, first of all, great to see the three of you again, and great to see the rest of you for the first time. As you mentioned, this was an acquisition for us about 12 months ago, in December of last year. As we all know, the Ypsilanti Big Boy has been a staple in the community for quite some time now, 30 years, I believe, or at least 30 years. So, it's been a great opportunity for us to become even more involved in a community that we've, been able to and be a part of for quite a long time. The business we're making a lot of improvements, and I think the numbers are speaking for that. That being said, and that's on the first page, the letter that was written here.
And your name, sir?
My name is Rick Stevenson.
Greg, okay.
And you'll see on that first page, we have made improvements, and I think those who are regulars, who frequent the restaurant, the level of service, the level of food, I think we've really raised the bar. But that being said, I think one thing that we struggle with is appealing to a diverse array of clientele, especially in the younger demographics. I think that we can definitely become more appealing. I think a way that we can really do that is if we can acquire this liquor license. Having been at the Tower Inn Cafe, Natalie and Royce having that for 21 years, it's a huge part of the business, whether it's the college students, whether it's all the way up through every age group. It's a huge part of the business. There are many studies that would indicate establishments that have this really improves their bottom line. And I know one thing Royce listed here, and I know Stan mentioned, is the in Tecumseh, the Tuckey's Big Boy. They saw a very sizable increase in their business, from about 20,000 to about 38,000 after acquiring our liquor license, and of course, also conducting several renovations. So for us, and as mentioned, the renovation list that we would like to go through is very expansive. We're not, we all know, we won't deny it's a little dated in some ways, maybe a lot dated, but we have a really we've really got a lot of great plans for it. We've got a lot of faith that it's going to be an excellent business for years to come in Ypsilanti.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mayor.
one of the things that made me feel a lot better about this is that they have purchased the building. They do plan on paying the building off in the next 5 years, and they do have the franchise supposedly locked up if everything moves forward. I think their idea of maintaining a small menu, probably the Slim Jims, the Big Boys, and the things that people normally go in and get real quick. will stay on the menu, then they'll be moving more to steaks and seafood and other items in the evening for their clientele. I felt very confident that they've put quite a bit of an investment into it already, pulling out a lot of their booths, putting in tables, which will give them some more capacity, I believe. I think that the fire department's going to have to check that out, but they have a lot of great ideas, and if they move forward and this liquor license helps them move from that 20 to the $35,000 to $40,000 a month range, I'm sure that they'll get their investment sooner. And I look forward to stopping and having dinner there and maybe a glass of wine.
Madam Chair.
Yes, thank you.
I just, one of the first things is, it won't be a surprise to the six of you. My concern was the later hours, the liquor license, the problems that go along with what I used to do. And I can say, before I retired, and they were the owners of the Tower Inn, I don't recall any problems there from our end as from law enforcement. That's not to say they won't have any, but when we went over their details of how they handle the service and the training their workers get, I think they'll be good, responsible caretakers of the liquor license and mitigate as many problems as they can.
That was one question. What are the hours of operation? I didn't see it in the packet.
So currently, the hours of operation are 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., and that is Sunday through Thursday. And on Friday and Saturday, we're open until 11 p.m. And the main driving factor behind that is, as you may know, at the Big Boy, it's a huge breakfast crowd, a huge lunch crowd. The dinner crowd is sizable, but a lot of our clientele are coming in at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and the hours that you generally see dinner going into, the 7:30 and the 8 o'clock hours, are not quite. It's definitely turning down a little earlier. So I think with this opportunity, and I know that was listed. I think it's listed.
Did I miss the hours?
I think we would expand that at least to midnight and maybe 2 a.m. on larger traditional late night. Definitely on Friday and Saturday night, we would like to be open until 2.
In the parking, there's 160 capacity, is that correct?
That's correct.
Is that parking adequate for 160? Must be, that's what it is now, right? But it just doesn't,
Yeah, the
seem
lot's
like-
the lot's quite sizable.
Is it? Okay.
We also have permission to park
In the back?
on the shop, yes. Actually, yeah, in the shopping mall.
And so in the weekend, would be your plans to stay open till midnight? Is that, or 2 o'clock?
2 o'clock on Friday and Saturday. And I think we'll have to see how, what the numbers look like, but I would say definitely expand that to at least midnight on the rest of the nights of the week.
Okay. Yes, Monica, did I jump in?
Thank you. Hi. I had a couple questions. Number one, as you spoke about, you do have a very sizable breakfast crowd. And just to let you know, I go there quite often on the weekends, and I love how, you must have did some new painting because it looks brighter in there. It does. It looks a lot brighter. So thank you. But in the same aspect, I know once you get a liquor license, you have it. So are you going to allow for liquor in your breakfast hours? Do you have specific hours that you're looking for the liquor? I guess that's the question. Yeah.
Well, something that, looking at our numbers at the tower, we don't do breakfast every day at the tower, but if you may know, on Sunday, we have a Sunday brunch that we run from 10 to 2. And what we've seen there is during those hours, your traditional breakfast drinks, your mimosas, your Bloody Marys are actually very, very popular. So I think that's something we would look at capitalizing, along with the breakfast crowd. And then for the rest of the day, a primary focus on beer and wine, I think would be our target. Just even from surveying some of our clientele, if you're going to get a Big Boy and fries, I think a beer makes perfect sense. So I think we could definitely capitalize on that.
Okay. And then last question is that looking at your operating projections, it appears that you're projecting anyway that between the liquor, beer, and wine, that you're going to increase the business at least that's going to carry 20.6% of your business?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. All right. And I guess my question would be, how would you justify that? Just curious.
Sure.
Yep.
Okay, so at the tower, we're right about that 20% of our business area. And that's where we've been for quite some time. So I do think that this would be certainly a target for us. I think it is aggressive, given the nature of the business. And I don't think that would happen overnight. But I do believe that based on the clientele we have and that we wish to expand to, I think it's definitely an attainable number. But again, not only if we can branch out a little more.
And I guess the only other question would be of Larry and Stan, remember the was it Blue Wolf?
Oh, I remember it well.
And there were, it took us, we decided not to grant them because they weren't owners was one issue, and verifying financial, so just to compare the two, those are the two things I remember.
Yeah, the one you speak of had a very minimal history in the business, limited success. We weren't able to verify a lot of the financials, and they were not purchasing the building. They were only on a short-term lease, wasn't even a long-term. Here, we've got at least 30 years of experience with Royce and his wife. Rick is the son-in-law who's come in and made this and his wife's work. They're buying the building, and they have a solid financial background with numerous ties. When I started to check, numerous ties throughout the community, particularly with Eastern Michigan and the students that they already employ and plan to employ. And another difference here is they're not renting or renting in our community or living outside it. They actually own a home that sits between the two businesses. So they're pretty much invested in this. I don't think they're going anywhere. And I mean, again, as the six of you know, as well as Doug, I can be fairly skeptical on a lot of things and a lot of people. And this one doesn't give me any cause for concern at all.
I just wanted to, because that come do a comparison, because we had the same issue in the past, and it was a much smaller facility too, the number of people that could come there. And then once if this is approved, you're going to make it a local theme? Is that what I heard you say?
That is correct, yes. We've made some renovations, as was mentioned. Some of the renovations we're planning to make, we're kind of waiting to see how this unfolds. If we are able to get the liquor license, I think that will help steer us. We definitely want to push Ypsilanti, push Eastern Michigan, and definitely make it so when you walk into it, it's the Ypsilanti big boy, not just any old big boy.
Yeah.
You reminded me several times of Ypsilanti Township.
Yes.
So some of the themes of our history, is Rosie the Riveter, Willow Run Bomber. That's some of our historical, local history that perhaps could be considered if approved.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, one thing we talked about that we've seen in some of the other big boys is that they've utilized, in addition to pictures on the walls, some really nice murals. And some of them, you can maybe visualize will have the traditional big boy, but we saw some, I think it was the one in Chelsea that had a little more of a unique feel to it. And I think we could definitely pull something along the lines of what you mentioned off and really, really push that history. That would be it's actually a great idea.
Well, EM's football field has the same, they have the auto. What is the name of their field?
Factory.
The Factory, isn't it? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Factory Field.
Factory Field, yeah, is that
That
it?
is.
It is.
Yeah, so it kind of goes together with,
The history.
To me, in the vicinity, in the immediate vicinity of the bar, God willing, my desire would be for that to be kind of the sport-targeted area. So I think we would definitely want to push the factory and pictures with the football team and really, you know, because we're just so proud of our roots here. I mean, if you've seen any of the images that we have, you know, with the big boy in the, you know, all the Eastern Michigan gear, it's definitely something we're all really proud of and we want to highlight to everyone.
We volunteered, Larry and Jimmy and I volunteered Doug to be their conduit for history.
Historian?
Yeah. They were going to have me dress up like Big Boy.
Oh, perfect.
You got red on, is that checkered?
Are there any other questions or comments on this recommendation?
I just, you know, if it goes through, I just welcome, you know, the great work that I know they're going to do. And I love Tower Inn, I love Big Boys, so I think it's exciting, the growth and stuff. And then I think that, you know, the time is right and everything with the growth in our student population and the growth in our township of that whole millennial population, which I know that's that after hours, that 7 to 2 group. So I think even the surveys show that's one of the things that people want is, you know, we have to go to the city for the brewery or for the Tower Inn. Like, we really don't have, other than on this side of town, you know, places where you can go have a nice dinner and have a drink. So I think that, I think it's perfect.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think that we could be a part of seeing a little improvement on that, you know, on the next survey we get through with, it would be great. And Stan, I do appreciate the vote of confidence you gave. I just want to expand on that. You know, again, Natalie and Royce have been doing at the Tower for 21 years, a lot of great work, a lot of huge part of the community. And myself personally came on board about 10 months ago, and Royce and Natalie were persuasive enough to get me to join forces with them. So, you know, I represent the next generation of Tower Inn and the Ypsilanti Township Big Boy, and really.
Good job.
Good job,
That's right.
Mom and
And the
Dad.
Chihuahua Chili Company, the food truck, which we have now in the Eastern, at the factory for the football games, and also in the big house for their games. So we have so much pride and so much excitement looking forward as what is going to be in the future for many, many years.
So there's no intentions to have it give you a liquor license and have you sell it immediately?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And again, I hope that it helps. As Stan mentioned, you know, we are purchasing the building, and that's not by accident. This is a long-term investment, and the franchise agreement continues for roughly a year. And regardless of what that next year brings, this is where we want to be at this location moving forward.
All right. Any other comments or questions? Thank you very much. It's nice to meet everyone.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate your time.
The next item is for an amended and restated escrow agreement for the hydro station between Ypsilanti Township and J.P. Morgan Chase, contingent upon attorney review. Mr. Winters?
Madam Chair, all of you have received the latest restated escrow agreement. This is the between the Detroit Energy, the township, and J.P. Morgan. The escrow agreement enables J.P. Morgan to actually distribute funds now to the township over the next 10 years. The escrow agreement, the escrow account currently stands slightly north of $800,000. And under this agreement, we will be receiving 10% of that escrow agreement, or the escrow funds, each year for the next 10 years, starting in January of 2019. So this agreement has been reviewed by myself, Giovanna, Michael Cernan, Larry Doe, and it just sets forth the types of investments in which this $800,000 can be allocated towards. Also defines the process as to who can receive information. We think that between Giovanna and Michael and Larry and what we've established to date, that we'll receive our funds in a very timely manner. In fact, the first payment will be based upon the close of business on December 31st, and Michael has spoken with the DTE reps, and we expect to have that final statement in hand in early January so that those funds can be received by the township before the end of January 31st. So it's a housekeeping matter, but it's also an important one because these funds are now going to be coming your way for the next 10 years. They'll obviously go down each year, but they'll start out at 80,000 and presumably next year it'll be 72,000, et cetera, until the $800,000 has been retired.
Questions or comments? It would be probably helpful in the future just to have a memo. I didn't see a memo, so I was trying to read everything, but the summary is,
I sent quite a few letters. I guess I could have.
well, I'm just trying to. Doug, what happens if, so the clerk and supervisor do not need to sign this because this is the treasurer and the accountant and.
No, there's provisions in this agreement for it to be signed by yourself and Clerk Rowe. There's also a provision in there for information to be accessed by Giovanna, the accounting director, Michael, the hydro director, and Larry, the treasurer. But the agreement itself has to be authorized by the board and authorize yourself and Clerk Rowe to sign the same.
I just didn't see a place to sign it, but that's okay. Unless it's up at top.
Actually, 3 places.
The designation of authorized representative?
No, that's if you
I'm
scroll
sorry.
down, you'll see where it says.
I'm just trying to find it. I'm so sorry. Okay. So authorized signing. Okay. Well, this is good. We're finally getting some of the money back from DTE, yeah.
Well, these are actually, these are township funds. Over the last 25 years, they have escrowed a nickel per kilowatt hour to ensure the township would perform its obligation to produce electricity. So it's our funds. It's not part of the city's funds under that, that fee sharing agreement. These are our funds, and so we'll start receiving back your funds. The life of the remaining years of the contract is 10 years, and so during the next 10 years, you'll get 100% of these funds that have been escrowed.
All right, sounds good. Thank you. Any other questions or comments on that? The next item is the approval of the contract with 14B Court, ASME Union. We did discuss this in work session, and it will be on the agenda. Number 4 is request approval of the change order with Weather Seal Home Improvements for the community center roof in the amount of $8,942, which is budgeted. Are there questions regarding that? We do have a representative, Christopher, from OHM, if there are any questions on it. The change order is within the approved amount, the original approved amount. All right, hearing no questions, we have the resolution for the supervisor, clerks, and treasurers' salary, which was 3%, the same as the unions and non-union. The trustees' salary was an error on my part. It had 0, so it had 0 because 0 is, you don't get a salary, it's a per diem. So we're gonna, it was distributed, correct?
But yeah, the tables, and it's also been reloaded to the packet now.
So I apologize for that. Any questions on that? The next one, and the trustees is the same as the previous year. Make that point. Then we have the wage resolution for administrative and confidential employees. We adopt this every year. It's really not required to do that, but we do this every year. And it's 3%. Questions or comments on? The next item is the regular board meeting dates. So this does eliminate there's there's one meeting in January, 2 in February, March, April, and May. In June, there's one. July, there's one. August, one. September, one. But if we need to call an additional meeting, we can do that. Then October, November, and December, there are 2 meetings. Are questions then? And this is the same that we've done in the past. Unfortunately, we had elections the entire year this year, so we canceled quite a few meetings due to elections or holidays. And these holidays are, you've verified?
Yeah.
Yeah. The next item is Robert's Rule of Order. We do this every year as a way to govern the processes at the board meeting. We have the designation of the depositories. This hasn't changed, has it, Larry? The same as previous years. But every year we're required to do this, and we're also required to designate the newspaper of circulation. So we have the Washtenaw Legal and MLive Ann Arbor. Same as last year. And there's no other business. There's no questions. We can take a short break before the regular board meeting that will start at 7. Are there any questions?